Hello, everyone, and welcome to Webinar Wednesday. I love doing webinars once a month because it's an opportunity for me to really share with you some of the things we're testing, some of the things we're seeing that work for our clients, and also it's a great way for us to share things that I'm even observing in and outside of the vegan business community. So what I hope to do today is show you a couple of different examples of how I'm seeing email drive action, how I'm seeing email really change the way that people are communicating with their community and with their audiences. So we're going to go through a couple of slides. I'm also going to take questions. So if this is the first time joining us, welcome. But please know that I want this session to be interactive. I want this session to really make sure it is answering your questions. And I also want to make sure that you walk away with something you can act on, something that you can implement. So feel free to ask questions, feel free to get clarification, anything you need so that you feel comfortable and ready to drive more action in your business. All right, so let's queue up the slides here for everyone. I'm just going to make sure everyone can see the slides. So one thing we're going to do is let me just pop them up on the screen. All right. So as I mentioned, today's session, our webinars today is really about email marketing. It's about this idea that when we do email, often we want people to take action. We want people to do something with these emails. And often what we're asking people to do is either watch maybe a video. Maybe we're asking them to listen to a podcast. Maybe you want them to read your blog post, or you ultimately want them to buy something. And what we want to do is make sure that the emails you're creating are created in a way so it actually does drive action. Now, there's so many different components and so many different ways to approach email marketing. So we're not going to be able to cover everything about email marketing today. But what I hope to be able to do is start to shed some light on things that you can incorporate, things that you can add, and ways that you can get better and better at doing email marketing. Now, if this is the first time you're joining me, I'm Stephanie Red Cross West. I've been vegan for about 15 years and have been running my business. Actually, I need to update that slide for almost about 12 years now. And really my key here is not only being kind of a person that can provide advice, recommendations, and ideas for people as they're running their businesses and as vegans are creating businesses, but what we really want to make sure is that at least once a month, and hopefully even more as we move forward, we offer you sessions like these in our Webinar Wednesday sessions that offer you some training, offer you things that can help you get an edge in your marketing, as well as provide an opportunity for you to do more or get a greater impact based on the work that you're already doing. So welcome, and I'm so glad that you're here. All right. So let's dive into some content. Let's dive into emails. Let's start talking about the types and purpose of your emails. Now, the reason I wanted to start here, the reason I wanted to ground everyone in here, and I'm just going to make one quick adjustment. I just want to make sure people who are looking at this as a broadcast can see it big and bold, is that there are multiple types of emails that you could be sending out. There are multiple types of emails that you could be using for different purposes. And one thing I want to break down is when you start to increase your impact with email, when you start to change the amount of action that's coming out of your emails, one of the best ways to do it is to make sure that you're breaking down and understanding what emails you're sending out and for which purpose. And the reason I wanted to make sure we kind of grounded here as we got it started in today's session is because where I find people make mistakes, where people are not getting that action that they wanted, is because they're either combining all of these emails together and just sending out one email, or they're trying to accomplish so much with one email or two emails that people don't know really what action you want to take. The other thing is, I know we all get a little tired, a little fatigued at times, because many of us are running small businesses. We're running businesses with small staffs. We're running businesses in a way that, we have to kind of wear a lot of hats. And what happens is we're like, I just don't have time for all these details. Can I just grab one type or two types and just send that out habitually? And the reality is you can choose the best types that work for your business. But what I want to do today and stress today is I want to remind you that to have a complete and effective email marketing strategy, you want to make sure that eventually may take you 3 months, 6 months, even may take you a year, eventually that many of these types of emails ultimately get incorporated. And let me use an example of that. My welcome email is probably one of my favorite types of emails for people to put in place. And it's a great email to drive action. Because what happens is when someone joins your email list, they're extremely excited. They're really looking forward to the information that they asked for or the reason that they joined your list. So instead of letting them wait until you send out a next newsletter, or instead of them waiting for content to come to them, what you can do is create a welcome email series. And this is a series that they'll get immediately after joining your list. This can be 1 email, 2 emails. I normally max out around about 3 emails when I do this. And what happens is this email can be automated. So it's automated. It's not something that you have to do and push and, you set it up and it's ready to go from here on out. But what's great about this email is it can give people a sense of who you are. It can give them a warm welcome. It can also drive that action that we talked about. Because if someone's new, if someone's coming to your site, and if you have recipes, why not let them know in that welcome email that, hey, go check out my recipes because I have a ton of them and this is where to find them. Because not everyone may know what you have on your website. Why and how someone got on your email list. Sometimes they got on your email list from a completely different lane than maybe your recipes as an example. So letting them know that you have those recipes, letting them know that you have those online courses or training, letting people know that you have articles on your website that can help them, letting people know that you have deals or any type of feature that would help them, especially as they're first learning about you and interested in you, is a great way to drive action because you're driving action while a person is probably the most excited about joining your email list. It's the day they sign up because most of the time we sign up for stuff. We're excited. We're interested. We want to know more. So what I want you to do is make sure you provide more. And that's what I mean when I start talking about types. That's what I mean when I start talking about purpose. When you start to peel back the layers in your email, when you start to realize that there are different types of emails for different purposes and can be used in different ways, what happens is you can lift your action by simply putting the right emails in place at the right time. The same thing goes with things like confirmation emails, like I have in number 5. A lot of people out there are doing cooking classes. A lot of people are doing live workshops. A lot of people are doing maybe even getting back to some in-person events. Or maybe, for example, you're sending someone an excerpt from your book. You're letting people know that you have a podcast. The idea is all of that can be set up through what we call confirmation emails. And therefore, when a person signs up, a person's interested in something, or when someone registers, by them being able to get an instant email that provides them either the information that they need or provides them the information you promised, what happens is you will increase or heighten your actions from people because it's an email they're expecting right away. So you may be saying, well, wait a minute, Stephanie, in a confirmation email, I'm just telling them the information they need. I'm just giving them the Zoom link. I'm just giving them the link to download. I'm just giving them that information. And yes, you are. But remember, this is an email they're expecting. This is an email they're looking for. This is an email that if you didn't send it, they'd probably be like, where is that email? And if you're in a scenario where you're sending an email to someone that they're expecting, you can put a request even in your confirmation email and get great action or great responses from it because you're putting it in a place and in a timing where people expect to get that email, so they're more likely to open it. And therefore, they'll be more likely to take the action that you want them to take. Now, don't worry. I know some of this may feel a little abstract. I will show you an example of it. It's one thing that we've started to do in our confirmation emails for our workshops as an example. And I find it's a really great way to engage people, to get people to take action, and also gathering information that we need. All right, now let me take a break here. Let me just take a quick stop because for some of you, I got a lot of stuff on the page. So number one, feel free, take a picture of this, take a screenshot of this, because as you go back and think about your emails, one thing I want you to do is make sure that you understand the purpose of the emails that you're sending out. Now, a traditional newsletter is probably item number 6 on my list. This is where you send out value, content, you're letting people know about your expertise. So just so you know that, because I don't use the term newsletter there, often I use the term about nurturing. So one thing I want you to do now, just while you're watching, is let me know which one of these emails you already have in place. I'm just curious where you are. And you can actually say, if you have all 6, you can just say all 6 in the comments. If you have 1 or 2 of them in place, just say I have number 1 and number 3 in place. I'm just curious where everybody is on the spectrum of getting this kind of complete approach in place. Now, while I'm asking or waiting for you to respond, one thing I want to say is, well, these are the types of emails that you want to be sending out. These are the emails that you can really make better and better over time to get better action. The reality is, I don't want you to put everything in place right away. I want you to take your time. So as you're moving forward in this webinar today, I want you to also pick an email that you'd like to work on next. Pick one of these types that you think would make sense. Pick one of these purposes that you want to achieve so that you can kind of have one in the back of your mind. So you can kind of have this concept of, I really want to work on my promo emails. So when I'm listening to Stephanie today, I'm going to be listening for ideas specifically for my promotional emails. Maybe you're a person that sends out a lot of surveys, or maybe you're trying to gather testimonials. Then you're looking at number 2, and you're going to say, you know what, today I'm going to really pay attention to ideas and recommendations that I can use for my feedback, my request, my surveys, anything that I'm doing where I'm gathering information. Maybe you're a person that really wants to hone in on that newsletter. Then what I want you to do is pick which one of those that you're going to focus in on today. So now, guess what? Got another question for you. Which one of these are you going to focus in on today? Let me know in the comments, because what will happen is I'll make sure I can maybe move the discussion a little bit closer to what everyone's thinking while you're here with me live. But just think about that, because I think that's going to be really key. All right? All right. Hey, Kelly, no worries. I understand if you have to jump off. I'll catch up with you later. I'm glad you were able to join. All right. Perfect. So I'm just looking through the notes here and just some of the comments. So we have a couple of people that have, an email in place. Maybe their welcome series have 1 in place. Love that. Number 1's in place. I'm definitely seeing that. An all-inclusive email. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. If you're thinking about an all-inclusive email, just want to give you a couple 2 cents. An all-inclusive email is traditionally a number 6, but one thing I want to recommend is to drive promotions. For most people, if you have to go streamlined, if you're saying, hey, I just can't do all of this right now, Stephanie, what I tell most people is to focus on number 4 and number 6. The reason being is you want to have a content email that really is great and full of information. But sometimes when you have too much content and a promotion together, what happens is the action that people are taking or trying to take can become diluted because they don't know which step to do first. They're starting to read the article and then they come back to read the article later. They don't get far enough down in your email to drive the action to sign up for a class, to drive the action to sign up for a program, to buy the book, and so forth. So one thing I always want everyone to think about is that at times you will need normally at least 2 of these types to really drive growth in your business and drive nurturing and content in a newsletter. So I just wanted to mention that as we're moving forward. All right, just some quick ideas and thoughts. All right, perfect. All right. So we have some folks focusing on welcome emails. We have a couple of people focusing on offers, a couple of people focusing on on the other one? Oh, number 2. So someone had a quick question about number 2. What do I mean by that? So option number 2, when we're talking about the purpose and type of emails, these are emails that you send out when you want someone to do something, but it's often not something like buy or sign up or register. These are requests that you have. So for example, when you're sending out surveys, surveys are a very good example of number 2. So you're asking people to tell us their opinion about something. You're asking people for feedback on something. The other option that falls into number 2 is when you ask people for testimonials. A survey and a testimonial are a little bit different. Surveys tend to be more anonymous. They tend to be more groups that you're getting results of everyone back. When you're asking for a testimonial, you're asking someone to not only send you back specifically information, and you can gather this through a form or they could just hit reply in the email. But the idea is when you're doing that type of request, a person is going to say, hey, this is my testimonial. This is my name that's going to be associated with it. And if they're willing to, maybe they'll do a photo or they'll include something else. The other thing that happens in number 2 is this is where you're sending out emails and you're trying to get a quick pulse. This is where people use things like NPS surveys. This is where people will send out an email and ask people like yes or no or thumbs ups or thumbs down. The idea is that when you're looking for people to either give you a full survey that they're completing, like 10 questions, or even a 1-question survey, these are an email type that you use to make sure that you're on the right track in your business and also make sure that you're getting the right feedback. So if you need to make a course correction, a correction to the product, a correction to the service, a correction to the program, a correction to the course, you're gathering that information and you have an email to actually do it. All right. So hopefully that answers your questions and helps with number 2. Let me know if anyone else has any other questions about any of these options, 1 through 6. Let me know in the comments and I'll make sure I address that for you. Okay. Now we talked about type and purpose. We talked about how important it is to focus on one of these because when you start to focus on these, you can drive action within them. Right. Now there's another component to driving action. And some of that has to do with the format and really kind of the templates that you use in your emails. Now, I'm going to break it down and make this as simple as possible when you're thinking about your email. The reason I want to make this simple is because marketing can get complicated really fast and it can feel overwhelming and feel like, oh, I got too many decisions to make. I don't know what to do, so then I don't move forward. I always want you to move forward. So when you think about your emails, and when you're thinking about, am I doing email number 1? Am I doing email number 2, number 6, and so forth? What you also have to make a decision on is the format you're going to use. Now, if I make this a very simplistic kind of offering or look at email, is what I normally do is put email in almost two to 3 buckets. There's a traditional text-based email format. It's a very popular format and it really does perform well. I know some people have mixed feelings about text emails, and really text emails work very well because they more mimic what we do when we send out an email to a friend, a family member, to an individual. We just hit the button, type in a couple of things, do a little signature, and then send it off. So therefore, when some of your email marketing, or maybe even all, depending on the strategy you choose, is a very text-based email, sometimes what it can do in your business, and this tends to work really well for people who are coaches, people who do a lot more service-based offerings, what happens is people start to feel like your communication with them is more not only personable, but it feels more direct. It feels less like they're just one of the group. Okay. Now, the other side of it is the kind of HTML pretty formats. Now, some of us just love this approach. We've also seen data where this works well depending on the type of business. So the idea is what I want you to start to think about is what type of format are you going to use moving forward? Now, one caveat about these formats, when you go into the kind of HTML design mode, there's normally kind of a split. And that's how I end up with kind of 2 buckets on that side. There's a traditional format that's multi-focused. This is the one you see in the middle. It's very commonly used as your newsletter, and it's commonly number 6 on the list. But there's also the single focused email. Same idea if it has more of a graphic design and images in it, but instead of having multiple things for people to read and to see, you actually kind of focus down and have people have one action to take and give them one piece of information to digest. This is very effective, especially when we're driving action, because what happens is instead of people having too many things to do, or too many kind of tasks to complete in an email, when they know that they just need to decide, am I showing up? Am I going? Am I signing up or am I registering? Am I going and reading that one article right now or watching that one article right now versus am I deciding which article to read? Sometimes you're going to see better action in these single focused emails. Now, I don't say that to say that's the direction you have to go. I say that to say that's one way you can get lift and one way we can see stronger results. And that's one way that we start to see kind of what works. However, with everything in marketing, and as you expected me to say, and what you're probably thinking right now is, well, how do I know which one works, Stephanie? I mean, yeah, I could do the single one, or I could do the multi-focus one, or I could do the text-based one, or I've read about this, or I've seen this, but how will I know what works for me? And the reality is in email marketing, and this is one thing I want to make sure that everyone gets comfortable with, and it's, as they say, it's a pill to swallow in a sense for email marketing, is that email marketing is all about testing, then testing again. So for you to know if text-based emails work for you, for you to know if multiple focus emails work for you, or single focus emails work for you, you're going to have to test it. Now, I know for some of you, you're like, oh, Stephanie, I thought you were just going to tell me what to do. I'm going to give you recommendations today. Absolutely. I'm going to show you things that other people are doing that you can try. But the reality is there's no substitute for you testing, looking at your results, and seeing what works for you. And what I want you to commit to is to commit to doing that. Now, testing doesn't mean that you're going to spend every ounce of your day in email marketing, because most of you probably don't have time for that. But what I want you to do is make sure that you go in with the expectation that when you send an email, you go back and look at the results of those emails to see if that format, that subject line, to see if that approach or any of these techniques that you try today, are they working for you? And I want you to use the data to help you make those decisions and help you move forward. So I hope that helps. Oh, Kelly, glad to hear you're coming back. I hope to see you soon. All right. So how does everyone feel about that? When I say, oh, you got to test and then you got to test again, did you just like sit back in your chair and feel like, oh, you just gave me more work to do? Or do you feel like, I get it, Stephanie. I get that this is a process of me getting good at it. It's kind of like riding a bike. You don't just jump on a bike, ride it once, and then you're golden. You ride a bike a couple different ways, a couple different locations. You ride a bike, getting off a curb. You ride a bike, in a more rural area, in a more city area, and you build those skills over time. Same thing I want you to do from your email. I want you to commit to building these skills out and being comfortable with testing. Okay? All right. So let's talk about drive and action. Let's talk about some of the ways you can do it. Now, remember, I'm always going to give you a whole lot of options. I'm going to give you different ideas. Some of this is because I want you to brainstorm. I want you to think like, would that work for me? Should I try that? I want to give you something to start with, something to ground you with. But at the end of the day, I don't want you to implement everything that I show you today. I want you to use this as a springboard to pick one or two things for you to try so that you can get that additional action. All right. So let's talk about layout. Now, when I talk about layout really has to do with breaking down the anatomy of your email. And now I use the word anatomy. It can start to sound a little complicated when I say that. But when I use the word anatomy, what I really want you to take away from the slide and take away from this webinar when I talk about the anatomy of your email is that what happens for some of us is we think of our email almost like a closet or like a dresser drawer. We just push more stuff into it, hoping that as long as the closet door closes, as long as that dresser door closes, it fits. It's kind of like, it's okay, I can just stick it in there. And what I don't want you to do is use that approach in your email marketing. I don't want you to feel like I can just keep putting content and information in here. Instead, I want you to approach your emails and understand how each component or each section in your email drives the action that you want people to take. How does it create or link back to those purposes that we talked about in the beginning of this presentation? So therefore, and this is a great tool I got from ConvertKit, and I know you can't read all the text on the page, and don't worry about that. I don't want you to read all the text. I want you to see this as a representative image. But the idea is, and let's start with some of these little arrows on the left-hand side. Let's start with the blue arrow. What I want you to do is start to look at your email and say, which component of my email am I using to drive action? What in my email am I doing that's going to help me lift and change the action in my email? Because what tends to happen is we look at our email sometimes as like all or nothing. Like it's just the whole email. And the reality is if you start to break down your email into sections, you start to look at the layout of your email, you might discover that there are things that you can do and change by looking at your email and its components as opposed to one item, one document, almost like it's a old school newsletter that you'd print out on a printer. Okay? So item number 1 at the top, the blue. This is your subject line. The idea is your subject line is a golden piece of your email marketing. It really matters what you put in your subject line. I know a lot of people tend to use this subject line as a summary line. Sometimes they'll use this subject line as just kind of like, it'll say overview of, it'll just say recipes and more. If you're putting something like recipes and more, that may not be enough to entice someone to open it. That may not be enough for a person to think, is this something I need to look at right now? It may not be enough for a person to say, is this for me or is this for everyone? So what I want you to start to do is pay attention to your subject lines, because your subject lines is probably one of the biggest things that can increase your action, because if more people open your email, it's more likely that people are going to click on your email. So I need you to pay attention to these subject lines. I need you to look around and see what other people are using in their subject lines. Sometimes people are using questions. Sometimes people are putting in expressions or emotions. Sometimes people do emojis, and there's a little bit of debate on emojis. Some people have seen emojis go well and some people haven't. So you have to, once again, test. But the idea is your subject line is your key, because if you can get people to open. Does that make sense to everyone, that your subject line and how important it is? Because I think a lot of times people jump into the layout or the inside and the graphics and forget about that subject line. But if you have a workshop, say I have an email workshop coming up, and if my subject line is email workshop, that may not be enough to get someone to open. I'd rather say driving impact, driving action through email than just saying email workshop. And that's the difference that I want you to start to make and start to pay attention to in your subject lines. The other thing I want you to pay attention to are images and screenshots. If you look at kind of my little green or turquoise, maybe I would call that, arrow there on the left-hand side, you can see on the page there's a little blue box and there's a little play button behind it. Remember, this is just for visual purposes. I don't need you to read everything on there. But the idea is that when you look at this email, and as you can see this anatomy of the email's behind it and the boxes are in front, what this is showing you is that you're going to have text, 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 but really putting an image in here can make a difference in your email. Now, you can do this even if you do text-based emails. We obviously would be doing this if you're going to be doing more of a traditional, what they call HTML or graphic-based emails. But one thing I want to talk about, and we'll talk about this even more, is really making sure these images are sharp, making sure these images represent the content. And one way that you get lift, and we'll talk about this when I show you some of the examples, is making sure that these images and these screenshots really have some dimension to it. Sometimes it's about making them animated. Sometimes it's about making sure that these have filters in them. You know, all those filters that we tend to use in Instagram and all that. Why not include that in one of your images in your newsletter? And also it has to do with cropping your images so it fits your email. Most images in email should be about 600 pixels wide. What I find for a lot of people is they shove an image in there and it looks a little distorted and looks odd. So I want to make sure that when you do email and you're putting those images in there, make sure you test them. Look at it on your phone, look at it on your tablet, look at it on your desktop, because we want these images to be sharp. And then the last thing when we talk about the anatomy of email, we want to pay attention to the text. Is it easy to read? Is it easy to skim? Are you using headlines appropriately? Are you making sure you have sections? So one section may be bullet points, one section may be a paragraph, one section may be a headline. By making and mixing things up, you can really make a difference. All right. Now, one question or one point that came through about subject lines. Yes, it's like subject lines can definitely be the magic. And I think that's one thing that I always talk about. And it's great to see a comment there about it as well. But it is hard to figure out which one. Now, one thing I didn't put in this presentation, but we'll talk about it right now just because I saw that comment. And I think it's so important to remember, is that when you're doing email marketing, the best way to start to figure out which subject lines to use is to use what they call A/B testing. Now, almost all email marketing systems have it. The systems that I recommend is MailerLite and a system I use called Drip. But some of the other common ones that people use like MailChimp, ConvertKit, Constant Contact, all of them will have an option so that you can do A/B testing. And what A/B testing does is it allows you to come up with like 2 subject lines. And depending on the platform, sometimes they'll even let you test out 3 subject lines. And what you can do is send a subject line to a portion of your list, see which one gets greater either open rates or click-through rates. And then the system, and most of your systems do this, where automatically it will send to the rest of the list the winning subject line. Some of your email marketing systems will just split it between your audience. So depending on which system you use, just take a look or go into the help section of your email marketing system and check what they use and how they do A/B testing. Because whether it sends the winning email subject line to the rest of your list, or it simply splits your subject line across your entire subscriber base, the key is looking at those results and seeing what technique about them were different that might have created that lift. And some of the techniques I like to do is like a statement versus a question mark. Some of the things I like to do is word play or word choice, types of words that people may be interested in. So testing those things out and trying them is a great way for you to get more and more comfortable. Okay? So someone just asked me to just clarify a little bit. Okay. So when I say A/B testing, what do I mean by that? A/B testing is just the term that's used from an email marketing standpoint. So I use that term because when you go into your email marketing tools, that's the term that they're going to use so you can find it. But if we back away from the idea of the term, what the system is doing is the system is saying, okay, you have 1,000 subscribers. And what the system is saying is I can either, so option A, of the 1,000 subscribers, I can take 300 of them. Send 100 subject line A, 100 subject line B, 100 subject line C. And then what the system will say is, okay, I send it to these 300. I'm going to wait 5 hours, 24 hours, whatever you decide. And within 24 hours, if subject line A, B, or C, whichever one had the greatest open rate, then I will send the rest of the email base, so 700 people, the winning subject line. So let's say subject line B was the winner. Then 700 people will get subject line B. And that's how you start to test your way to better subject lines. Other software will not do that dynamic where it sends it to the winner. What other software will do is it'll literally take your 1,000 and it'll split it up into threes. Let's see, 333, just to make my math mostly work. And it will send subject line A to 333 people, subject line B to 330 people, and subject line C to 330 people. Once you send out all those subject lines, look at the results afterwards and see which one created a greater open rate. When you do that, when you use that approach, what you should do is see the techniques or the differences between those emails and then incorporate that into your next subject line. And that's what I mean by do question marks do better? So if you have the same sentence that's posed as a question versus a statement, does it do better? If you're doing things where you put timelines in it, 2 days left to register, 2 days left to sign up, 2 days left to get match funding, 2 days left to sign up for our new program, those types of things versus saying, program starts on July, 29th. Saying 2 days left versus the date it starts can create a difference in your subject line. Sounds kind of nuancy, but those are the types of things you're going to test. All right. So I hope that clarifies on subject line testing. I'm curious, how many people have done subject line testing? Anyone done A/B testing or played around with it? I've talked about it in other email webinars. So I'm just curious if anyone has used it, or even if you decided to use it on your own. Have you ever tried A/B testing? If so, just let me know in the comments because I'm just curious how many people. Perfect. All right. So if it's new to you, definitely use your email marketing tool. They will have often a lot of training on it. Plus, we do like workshops and things like that where we walk people through it. So if you do need more support or you're hoping that maybe I can go into some of that deeper training, just shoot me an email and I'll let you know when we have that training come out. Okay? All right. Now let's talk about some examples. Let's talk about some layouts. Let's talk about, some of the stuff, not in just an abstract form, but in reality. This is an example of a welcome email. This is a welcome email I actually received when I signed up for their products. I'm always trying new vegan businesses, new vegan products, and so forth. And I thought it'd be great to share this because this is an example of a welcome email. Now, their email series, I believe it's only one email in that series. Maybe it's two. I just don't remember so well. But like I said before, 1 to 3 is normally your ideal. And if you're just starting out, start with 1 because you can always add more later. And what I like about this is showing you the same thing we talked about as far as layout, as far as technique, the way that you can set these things up. Sitting here and showing that they have a photo in here and a photo of them in their email. It's so personal. It makes it seem like the email that you're getting, you're actually getting it from Michael and James. And this is a technique where we're using imagery to pull a person in. And also it has imagery and branding. It has a branding of their logo and everything in the background. It shows them smiling, makes it feel very inviting. So what I want to make sure is that when you're creating an email, your welcome email, you're not just thinking about the text. You're not just trying to tell them everything about what you do. Instead, we drive some focus. We put in here a little bit of personalization. So as you can see, it says, "Hey, Stephanie, welcome." It says, Michael and James here. And I know the text is a little blurry. It's maybe a little hard for everyone to read, but I'm just giving you the concept here. So it has a little bit of message there. It gives you a couple of maybe glimpses into the information that it's available, that they have recipes. They're going to send you emails about product updates. They're going to send you even more recipes. They're going to let you know about promotions. And then they say again, did we mention recipes? So it's a very clever way of communicating and talking with people because what they probably found out over time is that people really want recipes. So they put that in here. They put an offer in for 10% off. And then you have a button that takes a person directly to the shop. So this is a great email kind of layout and format. I just had to cut it into 2 because I just wanted to make sure everyone could see it, from a general standpoint. And remember, this webinar is recorded. You'll be able to access it on our website, so you can always come back to this. But I think this is a great example of how they're using layout with having bullet points so it can easily be skimmed, with having the font nice and big so it's easy to kind of look at it. It doesn't look like an intimidating email, but using things like imagery to pull them in and putting one single button as the action item to take. And this is how you can start to drive action. This is how you can start to use layout depending on the format and maybe the purpose of the email. It may feel a little bit differently. This is one from Petite Newer. And what I really love about theirs is this is more of a product one. I've been talking a lot about service-based businesses, but I always want to make sure I show product-based businesses as well. But this is an email that's really driven by imagery. So less about text, but more about the placement of the images, the amount of images in here to pull someone in. So if your business is an image-based business, you have a product, you have something someone can physically hold and touch, make sure when you're putting your layouts together that you are featuring it front and center. Now you may look at this and say, oh my goodness, this feels very graphically put together. This feels like a designer is putting something like this together. And yes, they've worked on this and worked on it over a while, so they have a good flow. So in the beginning, you may not have all these graphical layers. That's not what I want you to take away from this. I don't want you to go from a plain text email to this. I don't want you to go from your newsletter to just had a logo and one image to this. What I want you to see this as your roadmap, as the place you would go if you have a business that is product specific. And even if it's not product specific, I want you to see the value of photos and how photos can be just as engaging as text, especially when you're trying to drive promos. This is one of my favorite content emails or traditional newsletter email. So one thing, and sorry, I was just reading that quick comment. This is one of my favorite newsletter emails because what it does is it shows you a lot of content in an email, but she's done it in a way where it doesn't feel overwhelming. And a lot of this has to do with space. A lot of this has to do with design. A lot of this has to do with the headlines and just the flow of this email. So I wanted to show you how design can drive action because when you get an email like this, it feels very easy to digest. It has a video at the top with a nice big button at the top so you can click on it. It has a button right below it that says watch. So the idea is that when you want someone to take action, having a visual button of it and then having text that says watch, not just click here. I see a lot of people use things like click here. And what I really find works better when you're trying to drive action is say the action you want them to take, because you're not really asking them to click. That doesn't excite people to click. But what people would be interested in is watching. What they would be interested in is accessing, downloading. That's why you see a lot of people using words that are the action that a person wants to take. Sign me up, save my seat, reserve my spot. That's why you see that text coming across in a lot of emails, because what you're doing to drive action is you're using words to actually say the action you want them to take. Okay? So when you think about your emails, think about, especially anyone who's considering option 6, thinking about layout and how you can simplify your layouts. They'll have multiple things in here, but also remember, it's not everything. It's one video, it's a meal prep, it's a couple of recipes, some recommendations, and a cookbook. What happens is this becomes a nice template that's used over and over and can be updated month by month, week by week. And this is how email gets less overwhelming. Because for most people, they think they're designing from a blank sheet of paper. And what I really want you to do when you think about driving action through design is coming up with a template. So in this example, order my cookbook. This is almost in all of the emails. The June recommendations, this will change. So this may be July, this may be August, depending when it comes out, but the format's about the same. Recipes, if you're a person that does recipes all the time, you're probably going to have photos in here. So you just have to drop those 2 photos in. And therefore, the content that really is changing often is the video that's created and the meal plan. So what I want you to do to make this system easy for you, especially if you're going for like 1 email a month or 1 email every 3 weeks, is think of a templated format so that all you have to do is drop in the new components of that email. And therefore, you can focus on the content instead of the layout every single time, instead of trying to make it perfect every single time. Okay? Now, always remember, don't want you to do everything. I don't want you to try to make everything work. I don't want you to try to do everything I'm showing you. Look at one of these and see which one speaks to you, and then you can leverage it. Okay. I'm not going to spend too much time on this one because I just want to show you a hybrid approach. A lot of times people like text emails instead of such graphical emails like this. So if you're a person that prefers text or you found that text has worked really well for your audience, I just want to show you how you can still incorporate images with text-based text-based emails. Plus, you can use things like emojis. This is one of the things I really love about this email. If you look here in this last panel, see how it has the little like fire emojis there? What happens is it catches your eye. So with all this text, especially if you have to do a lot of explaining, give people a lot of information, because sometimes we need detailed emails like this, I find with the bolding, with the emoji, and with the image, it's a great way to take an email that has a lot going on and help people digest it quickly and help people know where you want them to focus by using things like bolding, emojis, and even text color. Because a lot of people will use hyperlinks and they'll just make them the standard blue. But one thing that I learned a long time ago from, I think it might have been from her, is instead of letting your hyperlink links just be the default color, you can change those colors so they're your branded colors. And what happens is when you change it to your branded colors, they can be used to break up an email like this that can be long or have a lot of items in it. And they can become eye-catching points in your emails to drive action. So therefore, you can highlight or hyperlink longer text and therefore a sentence or phrase that you're trying to make sure that people see and they know where to click can be highlighted. And because you used it branded colors, you can have something that may be turquoise, maybe blue, maybe green, whatever your colors are. It's a great way to once again drive some of that action. Okay? Oh, Zuma, no worries. There's a recorded for this, so thanks for joining. And yeah, if you have any questions, just let me know. So I'm glad you were able to join us. All right. Now, I showed you all this fancy stuff. Some of you may be like, Stephanie, I just want to do some basic emails. I just want to get started. And I want to show you an email that I think is highly effective. And I actually leverage a lot from this in some of my emails. That if you're a person that sends a lot of events, you have a lot of activities, what a lot of people tend to do is send a lot of information to people when you want them to show up. And if you want people to show up, what I find is the action that you're trying to take is make sure people are there, is to simplify your email and your layout works really well. Making sure your subject line has the most important things in there, especially when it comes to a workshop, a class, these types of events, by putting the date in, the time in. If you're sending that email today, if you're sending out the email yesterday and it's got to say tomorrow, if it's this week, putting that in the subject line and then repeating it again in the email and making sure the link is front and center and making this email as simple as possible. I find this is another great way to drive action. So I want you to start to think about these things. Think about the idea of design. Think about how design can drive it. But the other idea is you can drive action from also timing. So when I talk about, actually, wait, let me just take a quick step back. Anyone have any questions so far on what you've seen or what we talked about so far? Just making sure. All right. If you do have a question, just drop it in there and I'll jump into it. So I'm going to cover two other ideas and ways to drive action. I know we're running a little bit out of time, but I'm going to try to go through them fairly quickly. But if you have any questions, as always, just post them in the comments, just post them in the chat, and I will make sure I dive into it. Okay? The other way I like to drive action in my business is with what we call triggered base links. These are links that what I do is I create or remove the friction in the process. What happens is for a lot of people, we're asking people to sign up for free events, often to drive awareness, to bring people into your email list, to get people excited about something that you're offering. If you have something like a free webinar, if you do a free class, if you do a free anything, what happens is most people will put a button in there and then a person has to go to a form, type in their name and email address again. But if someone's already on your email list, there's no reason for them to put their name and email address in. So when we send out our webinars, we send out two buttons. One button is Learn More. That button takes people to the website. So they can see a traditional experience, access the website, see all the information, even have greater detail, because we tend to put a little bit more detail on our web pages. But in the email, we also have what we call a register now button. And this is what we call a one-click, sorry about the typo there, one-click registration. And what this means is when person takes step one, they click on register now, they get automatically sent to a thank you page. And then from that thank you page, it sends a trigger into our email marketing to send a person a confirmation email. And by reducing the friction, by reducing the work someone has to do to register, to sign up, especially when it's something that you want them to sign up for and they don't have to pay for, what you're able to do, or what you should be able to do, is increase the action because it's less work on your person. Okay? Now, the question is, wait a minute, Stephanie, what's the tech? Like, does this sound like it's a lot of work? Does this sound like, oh my goodness, how do I get this done? And Julie, oh, it's so great to see you. I'm glad you asked that question. So here's the thing. When you use these tools, there's an easy way to do it and there's a complicated way to do it, just like anything. The easiest way to do this is think about these trigger links think of them as just links that people click on. Now, most of your email marketing tools, I'll use a tool like MailerLite, which I absolutely love. MailerLite has a free option where you can get started with I think about 1,000 names. MailerLite has this built in, so you don't need to hire anyone. You don't need any fancy tech. What it does is it says if someone clicks on a link in your email, and you can set up an automated email, and you can actually say, here's the hyperlink that if someone clicks on this in an email, automatically send them this email. Automatically send them a confirmation email. All of that can be done from your email marketing tool. It doesn't have to be built, it doesn't have to be created. A lot of this is built through the automation features. So if you want to implement this, I need you to start digging into that automation side of things. Now, I know sometimes it can feel a little intimidating. Sometimes it can feel like, oh my goodness, how am I going to get all this done? And yes, the first time you have to learn it, it's something to learn, but remember the benefit in the long term. Once you set this up, often it's set up forever. Often it's set up to work. So I have a lot of clients, what we do is we set it up, and just so you know, this works in MailChimp as well and a lot of other email marketing platforms. It's not just MailerLite. I do it in my system, which is called Drip. Is once you set this up, this can be so automated that anytime someone clicks on that link on your site, and like for us, we use the same webinar registration page every single month. We just update the text on it. So therefore, anytime someone clicks on it, we can set up so that that confirmation email goes out. The other thing that you can use is some email marketing systems will use tools called tagging. And what it will do is it will have a rule in there that says, if someone clicks on this link, tag this person with this or that. And I'll show you an example in a few slides of what I mean, but all of this can actually be done. Yeah, and that's the key is you want to get the most out of your email marketing program. For a lot of us, we're not getting all the features and benefits out of them. So no matter what platform you're using, I want to make sure that when you're thinking about some of the things that you can do, is go back to those platforms and start to look around, especially in that automation area. All right. Now, I personally like MailerLite better than MailChimp. So Karen, just to your question, the reason I recommend MailerLite is I find it's easier to use. It's more intuitive. I find it has better features in their free program than MailerLite does. And I also find that it has more engagement type features of what we're talking about. It has things like trigger links. And then I'm going to just jump ahead. It has this feature where you can add a YouTube video. So say you have a video on YouTube or Facebook and you want to send it to your list. You want them to be able to watch that video. So it's a great way to drive action. So by putting an image in your email, it'll help people click on that video to watch it. But what's nice about tools like MailerLite is all you have to do is grab that YouTube link, copy and paste it into MailerLite. And what MailerLite will do is it'll automatically bring in that thumbnail for you. In most platforms, you have to create a screenshot, get the image, crop the image, upload the image, put the image in there, add a play button on top of it. It's a lot more steps. But when you have tools like MailerLite, MailerLite will allow you to put those links in there. And then what it also does, and I'll show you in a few minutes what I think is so, so, so awesome, is it also will do a animated version of your video. So it'll show the video kind of moving around a little bit as a way for you to actually drive action. Because when something's moving or when something's happening on the screen, what happens is it tends to catch people's eye. And that's why I love it when you really max out the benefits of your email marketing tool, because it can make it much easier for you to get more out of what you're doing from an email marketing standpoint. Yep, the name is right. It's MailerLite. The way you spelled it is correct. And also, when you think about one-click registration, it sounds more complicated, but the idea is what you want someone to do. Oh, see you later, Shyla. So glad you were able to join. One thing that you want to do is you're literally saying, if a person clicks this link, what do I want them to do? So think of it like an if-then statement. If they click this link, add this person to this group. When you add them to that group, it'll actually allow you to know who clicked on that link. And then you can set up automation. So the person who joins group A that you set up gets an automatic email. So think of it more as a logical approach to your email than so much a technical approach to your email. And I feel like it might be a little bit easier for you to manage some of these things. Now, I'm going to try to do a quick screen share at the end to show everyone this animated video, but I want to cover two more things really quickly. The other thing you can do with trigger-based emails is you can send content based on them. So we send a lot of welcome emails, a lot of our emails that if you click on one of these links, then your next email is based on what you clicked on. So we send out an email and ask people, hey, are you interested in marketing? Are you interested in networking? Are you interested in building a team? And if someone clicks on that link, the next email says, hey, here's that information about networking that you were looking for. That's another way you create action. And what happens is your emails become interactive. Your emails become something that someone clicks on and then they get something based on what they clicked on. And that's one thing I want you to think about differently when you think about your email marketing. It's less about pushing out everything you have and all your information, but also thinking about driving action by having people take action. We're also incorporating this in a lot of our confirmations. In the past, I used to do multiple sessions, multiple things, and I would send people individual emails and ask them which session they wanted to sign up for. Now we're making this dynamic. So when I send out an email to someone can say, hey, I want to come to the July 29th workshop, or I want to come to the July 30th workshop. And all they have to do is click a button to let me know, and then my system is going to track that. Okay? Oh, hey, Katie, so great to see you. Love, love, love that you're getting some value out of this. Now, I know we're running over a little bit, so if you have to run, sorry I'm running over, but remember, this is going to be recorded. It'll be on our website, so you'll be able to access everything. I want to just show you a couple more slides, so anyone who can hang tight and hang with me. If you can, just stay with me. If you have a question and I haven't answered it, please post it in the chat because I definitely want to make sure I'll answer it for you before you leave. But thank you so much, everyone, for hanging out with me. Thanks very much for anyone who's going to hang out a little bit longer with me. And I just want to show you a couple other things. One other thing I like to show people is I still love text emails. I really do like text emails and emails that feel personal. So I don't want you to feel like all the fancy stuff I'm showing you is the way to go and the only way you have to go. Oh, see you, Lisa. Thanks for joining. As there is a hybrid approach. You can actually blend text emails and images. And I really see this done by a lot of people where they'll still have the text on the page, but they'll embed an image. They'll use a button. So it's mostly text and it's just a button. So I just wanted to mention that for my text email folks out there, because you can get lift and drive action by putting a button in a text email In addition to maybe the link or the hyperlinks that you had before, I found that is another great way to drive action. The other thing is think about creating a focal point in your email. I love these emails from Kat because not only does she put video in here, but what I love about it is she does really cute things and really like detailed focus things, like putting an email signature in there. She has like her name with the X's and O's. She has like a PS in there, and the PS is about the program, so someone can buy the program, but the email is content-based. And by using this kind of focal emails, like when you get into this email, you know what action Kat wants you to take. She wants you to play that. She wants you to click on that link. And this is something I really want you to pay attention to when you're thinking about doing your emails. Question, where do you find these webinars? All of these webinars are on our website. So on our website, if you go to the website, there's two options in the navigation. There's like Learn with Us and, I forget the other one. Let me pull up the site really quick. What I would recommend, it's free training and more. So if you click on our option that says free training and more, then click on webinars, you will see not only this webinar, but you'll see any previous webinars that we put in place as well. Okay? All right. So one other thing I just want to mention is I like to use text and HTML emails. The reason being is if I want someone to really take an action, if I'm trying to get someone to my website, because that's where the party is. Sometimes when we're thinking about email, the content's in the email, the information's in the email, or the action's just jump in YouTube and watch it. But at times when you're trying to drive action, you want people to go to your website because that's when they can get the full experience. And I really love the way that Jeff Walker does this because he keeps his emails really short, tight, and purposeful, but he also puts a nice personal tone into the emails, and he uses email as not the destination, but as the catalyst to get people to the website. So if you can start using email and create shorter emails, one link emails, emails that people can really look at it quickly and then get to your website as quickly as possible, I find you're going to get greater action in your business because of it. Okay? Now, last thing, and I'm speeding through it, so I know if you have questions, don't worry, you can always send me an email afterwards. Segmentation. This is one of my favorite ways to drive action. Is that often when we send email, we tend to send email to everyone. We tend to kind of put everyone in the list of subscribers and send them everything. And what I've been finding over the years and where we've been starting to get better results is by starting to segment your email list and then send those emails to those segments differently. I've seen people get greater action. And what I mean by that is this is the system I use. I use a system called Drip for my email marketing. Absolutely love it. The only reason I recommend MailerLite for most people when they're getting started is MailerLite's more cost effective, great tools, great place to start. And then when you're ready to go to that next level of email marketing, then I would go to Drip. I did the same thing. At the time, I didn't know MailerLite, so I started with MailChimp, and then I converted over to Drip. But if anyone's starting out, go to MailerLite. If you feel like you're outgrowing your email marketing system, then consider something like Drip. But just showing you kind of behind the scenes how things work. One thing we've started to do is segment our list. So as an example, we have podcast. I do these segments where I kind of give people inspiration, motivation. And what I like to do is send out that content. And we've been concerned about that content because it's so much content, sending it out to our whole list. We're not sure who's interested in it, who really wants to see content A versus content B versus content C. So now what we start to do is segment our list and segment them based on the actions that they take. Then that dictates the action or the email that I'm going to send so that I can get greater action. I know there was a lot of actions in there. But what I mean by this is the idea is why not set up a rule? And this is the way it's done in Drip. It's done a little bit different in systems like MailerLite and MailChimp. It's similar principle. The idea is that you can track people clicking on links like we talked about earlier. But what you can also do is track people based on if they've clicked in the link in the last 60 days, last 90 days. So when you start to create segments based on people's actions, now you can send them the content that they're interested in. So if we find that people are clicking on, or a segment of our population are clicking on our Spark podcast, where another segment of our population are clicking on our Pivot podcast, and then another segment of our population likes our webinars, instead of sending all three segments all of that data, what we've started to do is send the information to the segments that have shown interest in that content. And what it allows us to do is make sure people are getting the content that they want. And therefore, when we create those emails don't have to have, as they say, everything, including the kitchen sink, or everything but the kitchen sink in them, I think is the right phrase. What these emails can turn into is into single focus emails, which tend to get the greatest action. So if you can start to think about segmentation, and I love this because MailerLite does the same thing. I teach people to create groups or segments in MailerLite, depending on how you set it up, where you can actually say, if someone clicks on this link, let's say, for example, you have 3 products on your site. One's your class page, one is a coaching package that you offer, and maybe you have an online course, okay? You can set it up in MailerLite that if someone clicks on the link for your course, they get added to course interest group. If someone clicks on the link for your class, they get added to class or cooking class interest group. You can even do this as a nonprofit. If you want to say, if someone clicks on my donate page, I add them to my donate group. And then what you do is when you send out an email to that segment, now it doesn't mean you're only going to send them these emails. They may still get other emails as well. But when you really want to drive either sales, donations, or actions, instead of sending emails to everyone in the list, why not send a single focused email to the people who've already said that they're interested in your class, your course, you're maybe potentially donating? And this is a way to drive action and get greater lift, because what you've done is you've focused your emails, and also what you've done for your community is, instead of sending them everything, you started to figure out a way to segment your email list so that they get the information that you need. Okay. Yes. Question about leaving people behind. Absolutely. The question is, this is not an exclusive strategy. I'm so glad you asked that question, Joy. This is not a strategy where you only send the people in that group. It's not that you're only going to send the people in this group this email. What you're trying to do is make sure that if you have a lot of content to send out, instead of everyone getting everything and people getting things that maybe they're not interested in and potentially unsubscribing, what you're trying to do is you're trying to determine in your email list what people are interested in. So step number 1 in this process is just setting up the segments. And whether it's 60 days, 90 days, 180 days, you have to test your way through it. If your list moves pretty fast, then you want it to be shorter, like 60 days. It may be over 6 months. But what I tell most people to do is set up the segments first. Don't even send out any emails. Because in the beginning, you're just starting to see who's really interested in what content. How many people, and do you have kind of clusters of people that tend to be interested in content A versus content B versus content C? This is really important when people have like recipes on their site and classes on their site, or they have multiple things. You have an event like Amy, you talked about like your gala as an example. We have all these different things that you're offering, different campaigns, different things, especially when you have 2 different customer base. Maybe you're working with schools, and then you're also working with individuals. What happens is, by starting to understand in your email list who is whom and who's interested in what, you can use segmentation to help you say, well, I have 1,000 people on my email list. But in this example, I have almost 400 people in my Spark segment. I have 50 people in my Pivot segment. And then maybe I only have 200 people in my webinar segment. What that tells me is my audience is more interested in Spark. And therefore, instead of me emailing and sending everybody everything, I may lean a little bit more towards the content that people want, and then take a step back and figure out, is this other content still valuable? Or do I need to just position it better, email better? Or do I need to build a segment and a following for it? And this is how you get more strategic with your marketing. This is how your marketing isn't just blast, 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 because if you just keep blasting, your action's going to go down. But if you start to understand your segment, start to understand who's responding, who's clicking on what, you can start to build a better email marketing strategy down the line. And you can decide when you'll send out those single email focus, when you'll send out these emails. And this is great too. I didn't mention this, but there's always a segment in everyone's list who doesn't even open your emails. You may want to segment that group of people who haven't opened an email in the last 6 months, in the last 4 months, and email them differently to reactivate them. And that's how segmentation helps you get better action, because instead of sending everyone the same thing, you can start to send different segments in your list, the information that either matters to them most or to drive the action that you want to get the most. And therefore, it makes your email better. So when you're running a last minute promotion, instead of sending your email to everyone on your email list, what we'll do sometimes is I'll send it to people who've already been to the sales page. Because if someone's opened the email and opened 4 emails and never signed up for the class or never signed up for the program, and they never clicked to see the sales page, that's a different person than a person who's clicked on my link, went to the sales page 4 times, but they didn't sign up. And I want to treat those people differently. And by treating them differently, often you have a better relationship and often you will get better action and better results. All right. So I'm going to leave that here. Sorry we went over a little bit. I'm really, really, really glad that that everyone stayed a little bit longer. And remember, I'm showing you some basics and I'm showing you some advanced stuff. So some of this stuff, it takes a little bit of time to play with it. So number 1, rewatch this webinar. Number 2, if you have a question, let me know. Number 3, if you need more hands-on support and work, sign up for one of our workshops. I'm actually going to do an email marketing workshop in August. I think it's August. Oh, I can't remember the dates. It's the last week of August. So the last Thursday and Friday of August. And that workshop, while it's paid workshop, that workshop is an opportunity where we dive deep and we do things like I go into MailerLite, I go into Drip, I go into these systems and show you how to set them up. And that's a great way for us to do it. We try to keep it economical. So they're about $30 or $40 depending on the workshop. So if you need more, I highly recommend you go there because you can get more training. But if you need something quick, you have a question, please, please, please don't hesitate to ask. Don't hesitate to rewatch and don't hesitate to connect with me. Connect with me on LinkedIn if we're not already connected, because it's great to hear how everyone's doing. It's great to hear how you're leveraging a lot of this training. And it's great to hear about your success and wins, even if it's just, Stephanie, I finally checked out A/B testing and I got it to work. Or, hey, Stephanie, I did some segmentation and oh my goodness, I was blown away by what I learned about my email list. Or even if you just said, you know what, I put a button in my emails and I saw a greater click-through rate. I want to hear about it because those wins matter. And it's so important for you to just take one step at a time to move forward. So I hope today's webinar was helpful. I hope today's webinar was inspirational. And I hope today's webinar gave you some ideas of things that you can do as you move forward so that you don't feel like you have to do everything to move forward. But the key here is that there's opportunity for growth. Just take it one step at a time, 1 week at a time, 1 month at a time. And ultimately, you'll be able to drive the action that you need. Hey, Kelly. So good to see your message there. So everybody on social media, we're going to drop out. My folks in Zoom, if you have any last minute questions, I'm going to jump back into Zoom to just see if you have any questions. But everyone on social media, thank you so much for joining us. It was so great to have you here today. And I hope you have been inspired and you're getting out there and driving some action. So take care, everyone on social media, and I'll see my Zoom crew in about 2 seconds.